Pulling up black windows once you go down. You must be crazy if you think that I'ma slow down. Don't wanna hear it talking shit, fuck the drama. Keep it coming, I'ma send you to your mama. Mr. Whip, get the guns out. Dropping bodies in the place till the sun's out.
Remember that time Craig Jones farm flew you in his guard? I mean, what can we learn from this, right? What can we possibly learn from a Von Flue choke in the guard, right? The Von Flue choke is just a head and arm choke. That's what it is. All I need to get a head and arm choke is to block your artery on this side, block your neck in this area here on this side with some part of, the blade of my arm, ulna, whatever, block it on that side. And then I need to get your own shoulder, like pressure behind your own shoulder to raise it up and push your own structure of your own shoulder into that side of your neck. And then I block both sides of the neck and I get the compression, and that's what creates the choke. So that's what's happening with the Von Flue choke. You can see here, first of all, this is a guard. We don't just try to pass this all willy-nilly and ignore it. We don't have like that inside space. That leg is still there. Both legs were still in play. It was a guard, and it got us into trouble trying to go around it. But right off the bat, I want you to notice the side that Craig is on, right? If my man had kept his hips on this side, where let's say our opponent, not Craig Jones, but our opponent, if his hips stayed on this side and Craig Jones' hips were on the other side, this would be another story. This would be a problem. But because Craig escapes out to this side, it lets him stay in relatively good posture, a relatively straight spine. And then that opposite arm, like I said, all it needs to do is be tight enough to the neck and create enough pressure to pressure into the spot and block off that side of the artery. And then I'm just reaching around, making a connection. And then what I'm doing is I'm using this angle, the fact that I'm off to the side, my head gets behind the shoulder and is able to push that shoulder up into that inside of his neck and create that pressure, right? So obviously, if he was able to release his arm, the pressure wouldn't be there anymore. But he can't release his arm because it's bit so tight between Craig Jones's own shoulder and his neck, right? So it's stuck in place now. We would have to address the guard in the angle. We need to get our hips back over onto this side in order to complete that. But he's just in so deep now, the guard's so tight, like you're really stuck at this point. It's fully locked. You're kind of done. That's a lot of torque on that guy's shoulder too. Like this was a sucky place to be in a lot of ways. But what we do wrong isn't necessarily like the thing he did wrong was once he throws this underhook and then tries to turn and roll Craig Jones over is he goes that way, right? You don't want to go around into his guard and take yourself into his guard. If you're going to run the underhook and the head control and pull them over, don't run your hips to the guard. That was the problem, is running ourselves into the guard. He's tight. All this is being protected. If we run ourselves into that, we're going to get locked up in a bad way. And that's really the big mistake. It's the hips. He runs his hips all the way around to the wrong side. We want our hips to stay on this side when we're running that pressure and that underhook to turn them over. We want our hips to stay on this side of the body, not run them around to the other side. Interesting. Mm. So we just talked about the Von Flue. Now let's talk about an exposure that Von Flue has and how our legs can rescue us from it, or rescue us from the Von Flue. Craig Jones is going to basically concede a sweep here. Let this guy go to top half guard. Did you see Craig Jones purposely give him that arm? That was absolutely on purpose. That head and arm, he tucked that to the inside, and there's something he was looking for there. And I wonder if, in fact, it is the buggy. So half guard, conceding the head and arm exposure in order to throw the buggy. Right? Did you think of that? If you're good at the buggy, you have that option. If you have that kind of flexibility, that's viable for you. I mean, this is a perfect example. I've always said this about I think the buggy choke exposes an error that so many people at high levels of jiu-jitsu make, and it's the far side underhook. I don't think this exists, at least not like you're seeing here, and not like you've always seen when it comes to like side control and half guard. Look at how much exposure is here. My elbow is so far away from my sides that I really can't generate any kind of good underhook pressure with my arm like that anyway. And then it's exposure on top of that. So first of all, it's not effective, not doing much, and it's exposure. It's open elbow, it's exposure. The only good this kind of configuration ever does, the Von Flue is an example of, is just going out there to help you lock. It creates a lock so that you can create leverage with your other arm, the inside arm, and create like choking pressure and cross-face pressure that way. That's the only good it can ever do for you. In this case, we're not even locking with it. So what good are we doing? He's grabbing the shoulder, I guess, and maybe trying to pull that back down into him. But that's all pointless. What it needs to be doing, if we are going to throw a Farside underhook, it's controlling the hips. It's our elbow closer to our body, and it's down here controlling our hips. But anyway, we're going to look at how this, in the exposure of it himself, this guy is running into head and arm Von Flue pressure, right? And again, he's going to kind of knee cut half-heartedly, but Craig Jones led him into that spot. He knew exactly what he was doing from the get-go. There was no control over his hips, so he's just able to throw that leg right up there and get a nice solid bite. His arm is able to bite deep on that side. And that's kind of, that's important too, because like, I think a mistake a lot of people make in the buggy is like, they think about this pinch on this side being the important pinch, but actually on this side of the neck, this exposure here is going to be your most important pinch, and what you really have to get right. And then all you're doing at that point is getting your hips behind the shoulder like we talked about. Head and arm chokes is just compressing this side and then lifting that shoulder up. So your hips get behind and it lifts that shoulder up that way and blocks off that side of the neck. You'll see him lock it in. And like, see how his hips kind of rotate inward and upward and bring that shoulder up into the neck? I think he even does a wiggle too. This wiggle might look stupid and funny and like he's just messing with the guy, but that little wiggle is actually even filling in all the little tiny gaps of space. So he does this little kind of kip, a little wiggle, and it's just filling in all the little bits of space. And then when he brings it back, the hips just sink in and it's done. He's putting crossface like Von Flue pressure on Craig, but it's not near enough. I mean, think about the whole weight of the hips drawing a shoulder into your neck versus you pushing a shoulder into the neck with just that floppy outside far underhook arm, nothing. Yeah. All right.